On my calendar.
Probably have mine in there.
That's right. I don't. You want to? No, it's right, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I was going to break one. Say, my name is John Potts. I don't know whether it's
Good evening, everybody. This is the regular meeting of the Municipal Council of the Borough of Ocean Board for March 21st, 2019. And this is a statement of compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act. This meeting complies with the Open Public Meetings Act by notification on January 9, 2019 of this location, date, and time to the Asbury Park Press and the Link News, and by the posting of same on the Municipal Bulletin Board and the Borough website. I ask you all to stand and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for the rotation.
Well, hello, Ocean Port. We have a packed house tonight. It's good to see everybody. Let's just have a moment of prayer. Lord, bless our meeting. Bless our governing body and the entire community of Ocean Port. Help us to remember to honor and respect one another as we move forward in continued success. May the favor of the Lord be upon us all. Amen.
We have a roll call, please.
Councilman Proto?
Here.
Councilman Iris?
Here.
Councilman Gallo?
Here.
Councilman O'Brien?
Here.
Council President Solon?
Here.
Councilman Deere? Mayor Coffey?
Here. First item we have is we went to executive session. One is for a personnel matter regarding the police chief's request to attend the FBI Academy. And the second involves litigation and negotiations and attorney-client privilege regarding the Ocean Port Gardens renewal project. My guess is we're going to retire to
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to look at and have that amended. Make a motion to have that amended.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We're going to remove the portion for the police chief from the executive session, and then also rearrange the agenda to move the executive session to the end of the meeting.
I think confirm that, employee Chief Kelly signed the rights notice allowing him to be in public session.
Okay. All right, so we've got a motion to the vote. On the vote?
Councilman Proto?
Yes.
Councilman Iris?
Yes.
Councilman Gallo?
Yes.
Councilman O'Brien?
Yes.
Council President Solon?
Yes.
Motion carried. Agenda's been amended.
Okay. Our first matter then is to discuss,
You want to, okay, want to make sure you do the chief.
first,
So- Go ahead.
the first matter is Chief Kelly is here. He's been selected to serve in a specific capacity. It's actually an award, really, something that recognizes that he's different than the rest. And he's requested that he be allowed to attend the FBI Academy. Here we have the resolution. And he's going to the Federal Bureau of Investigation National Academy Session 278, which is a 10-week program that begins on October 7th, 2019, and ends on December 20th, 2019. He won't be here during that time, but he's going to learn a lot. Anybody have any comments on this or questions of the chief?
Congratulations.
Gene, do we need to read this resolution in
Yes.
full? Okay, it's a resolution of the Borough of Oceanport approving Police Chief Michael Kelly's request for special leave to attend the FBI Academy and the use of the vehicle assigned to the chief authorized for out-of-state use. Whereas Police Chief Michael Kelly has been selected to attend the prestigious Federal Bureau of Investigation National Academy Session number 278, a 10-week program beginning on October 7, 2019 and ending December 20, 2019. And whereas Chief Kelly has requested the governing body's support for his attendance and authorization to use the borough vehicle assigned to the chief for commuting to the academy's location in Quantico, Virginia. And whereas the governing body congratulates Chief Kelly for being selected for this prestigious opportunity and offers their support and approval of his request, now therefore be it resolved by the governing body of the Borough of Oceanport, County of Monmouth, State of New Jersey, that Chief Kelly's request for leave to attend the FBI National Academy as offered, with continuation of salary pursuant to his contract and authorization to utilize the borough's vehicle assigned to the chief for the purpose of commuting, is hereby approved. Be it further resolved that the borough clerk shall provide certified copies of this resolution to Chief Michael Kelly, the borough administrator, the chief financial officer, and the payroll clerk. And we need a motion
Second.
on the vote.
Councilman Proto?
Yes.
Councilman Arase?
Yes.
Councilman Gallo?
Yes.
Councilman O'Brien?
Yes.
Council President Solomon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Congratulations again, chief. You want to say?
No, I have a feeling that
Okay. No, I'd just like to thank the mayor and council on this. This is it's a prestigious academy. Basically, just 2% of law enforcement in the world are selected to go to it. It's a live-in academy, 10 weeks. I'll be only commuting back and forth probably 3 times, which my wife loves. But again, the department being capable hands, the captain, Captain Chenoweth, who ran the department in between Chief Parker's retirement and my promotion, is well capable of running the department. So, and I'll also be in contact with him constantly. But again, I appreciate the opportunity and the guidance, and thank you to the mayor and council.
First item after that is the administrator's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to report that the Oceanport Pool RFP has been issued and proposals will be received on April 11, 2019 at Borough Hall. I've been running into issues in securing quotes for work that needs to be done with tennis and basketball courts at both Community and Blackberry Bay Parks. I've reached out to 5 different companies. To date, 1 quote has been secured and another is expected next week. However, the quote that has been received is over the pay to play, so unless that company is a state contract, we will need to go out to bid for the work that needs to be done. I've also reached out to Taylor Fence Company to begin the work on the fence at Evergreen Park. Progress is being made on the municipal complex, working with the architect. We have approved the architect's final plans for the municipal building, and we are very close to approving the architect's final plans for the police building. I've submitted a scope change to state OEM for FEMA for the demolition required. It does appear that there is an osprey nest in the vicinity. However, it has not been determined how or if that will affect us as we move forward with the demolition. I have been in touch with the chief wildlife biologist of Goose Control Technology, who also has some expertise in ospreys regarding the issue. He did advise that if a determination needs to be made as to whether or not the nest is active, he does have a biologist on his team that would be able to make that determination. So we'll just wait to see what happens on that. Our right to know filings required to be submitted by July 1st have already been submitted by our clerk, Jeannie Smith, well in advance. Thanks, Jeannie. I have completed 2 days of a 3-day Mel GIF leadership course for new supervisors. So far, it has been very informative and helpful, while at the same time providing me with the opportunity for 12 clerk CEUs, just in case they're needed. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to entertain them. If not, that concludes my report.
Questions? Nope. Comments? Okay, we move to the consent agenda. Items 1 through 10, 2019-76 through 2019-85.
Mayor, quick check 77.
We will treat that separately.
Separately,
Mayor, that, these 9 remaining items on the
Correct.
consent agenda, is there a motion?
Is there a motion for that?
So moved. Second. Second.
On the vote.
Councilman Proto?
Yes.
Councilman Irish?
Yes.
Councilman Gallo?
Yes.
Councilman O'Brien?
Yes.
Council President Stoll?
Yes.
Motion carries. Resolution 2019-77, approving the certified LoSAP list for 2018. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Proto?
Yes.
Councilman Irish?
Yes.
Councilman Gallo?
I'll abstain.
Councilman O'Brien?
I'll abstain as well.
Council President Solon?
Yes.
Motion carries. Mayor, the next item is the minutes.
Minutes, yes. So we've got approval of workshop minutes, February 7, 2019, approval of executive session minutes, February 7, 2019, approval of regular minutes of February 21st, 2019.
Taking them all together, Gene?
We'll take February 7th together.
I'll make that motion.
Second. I got a question on it. Minutes changed between the original, or the last meeting and now, so now we're including quotes in our,
I asked, before that meeting, Jean was out at the last minute, but I asked her to make that change because that's what led to that discussion.
we're not including all quotes though.
Well, that specific quote led to the heated discussion.
Okay. I don't get a
It
vote
wouldn't
on
have been a
this.
heat, my comment is it wouldn't have been a heated discussion without that comment being made.
Okay. All right. But that's, we're gonna include quotes going forward.
Only the ones that caused the meeting to go in a different direction.
Okay. On the vote? Motion, actually, motion for February
I
7th?
think
Yep, that we have that.
we have the motion in a second.
Okay, on the vote.
Councilman Proto?
Yes.
Councilman Irish?
Yes.
Councilman Gallo?
Yes.
Councilman O'Brien?
Yes.
Council President Solon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
This is the approval of the executive session minutes, February 7th, 2019. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
On the vote.
Councilman Proto?
Yes.
Councilman Irish?
Yes.
Councilman Gallo?
Yes.
Councilman O'Brien?
Yes.
Council President Solon?
Yes.
Motion carries. If you could turn those into me. And then the,
Executive, those are the yellow sheet.
yes, turn those back in. And then approval of the regular minutes of February 21st, 2019.
Do it again. Just make sure.
So moved. Second.
On the vote.
Councilman Proto?
Yes.
Councilman Irish?
Yes.
Councilman Gallo?
Yes.
Councilman O'Brien?
Yes.
Council President Solon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next items are resolutions. First one, these are our consent, number 2019-86, which is a resolution setting fees for extra duty assignments. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions or comments, or go right to the vote? Nothing, so right to vote. On the vote?
Councilman Proto?
Yes.
Councilman Arese?
Yes.
Councilman Gallo?
Yes.
Councilman O'Brien?
Yes.
Council President Sullivan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item is 2019-87, which is a resolution authorizing an emergency temporary appropriation.
Second.
On the vote?
Councilman Proto?
Yes.
Councilman Arese?
Yes.
Councilman Gallo?
Yes.
Councilman O'Brien?
Yes.
Council President Sullivan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Final resolution is 2019-88, which is a resolution authorizing liquor license appraisal. Motion.
Move.
Any questions or comments? On the vote?
Councilman Proto?
Yes.
Councilman Arese?
Yes.
Councilman Gallo?
Yes.
Councilman O'Brien?
Yes.
Council President Sullivan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item, we have a first reading of ordinances. We have none for today. So we've got to move on to item 12, which is a second reading and public hearing for ordinances. The first one is number 996. And it's a second reading and public hearing on amendments to the property maintenance ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jeannie, please read the affidavit of publication of the proposed ordinance by title only.
This item was published one time in the Link News on February 28, 2019. An ordinance of the Borough of Oceanport, County of Monmouth, and State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 295 of the Code of the Borough of Oceanport, entitled Property Maintenance, passed and approved on October 3, 2013, as last revised and passed on August 20, 2015.
Okay, at this time, the statute requires that there be a public hearing. If anyone has the opportunity, has the willingness to come up and take the microphone and ask questions or comment on this, now's the time. There being none, I have a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
On the vote. All in favor?
Aye. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to adopt this ordinance and advertise in accordance with law.
Second.
On the vote?
Councilman Proto?
Yes.
Councilman Arese?
Yes.
Councilman Gallo?
Yes.
Councilman O'Brien?
Yes.
Council President Sullivan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Number 997, again, this is a second reading and public hearing. It's an ordinance that is the second reading public hearing of an ordinance for the maintenance of the borough's right-of-ways.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jeannie, please read the affidavit of publication of the proposed ordinance by title only.
This item was published one time in the Link News on February 28, 2019. An ordinance amending Chapter 331, Streets and Sidewalks, and Chapter 371, Trees of the Code of the Borough of Oceanport, County of Monmouth, State of New Jersey, for the maintenance of right-of-ways.
And again, this is an ordinance, it's a second reading, so the statute requires that we have a public hearing. Does anyone want to take the microphone, come up and talk about this, ask questions, or make comments? Seeing nobody, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote?
Aye.
Aye.
I make the motion to adopt this ordinance and advertise in accordance with law.
Second.
On the vote?
Councilman Proto?
Yes.
Councilman Arese?
Yes.
Councilman Gallo?
Yes.
Councilman O'Brien?
Yes.
Council President Sullivan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And the third of the public hearing ordinances, we have a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance establishing the Environmental Advisory Committee.
Jeannie, please read the affidavit of publication of the proposed ordinance by title only.
This item was published one time in the Link News on February 28, 2019. An ordinance of the Borough of Oceanport, County of Monmouth, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 29, Article 4, and repealing Chapter 250-13 of the Code of the Borough of Oceanport, dissolving the Borough of Oceanport Environmental Commission, and creating an Environmental Advisory Committee of the Borough of Oceanport.
Again, it's a second reading. This is the opportunity now for public hearing. If anyone has any comments or questions, please take the microphone, state your name and address, and take the microphone. Please step away from the speaker.
Ronald Zucker, 45 Morris Place. Pardon me. Why is this being done? The commission, as I understand it, no one gets paid. It's been functioning for years. Rumor has it, and rumors are just rumors, that somebody on this council had an issue with somebody in the commission, and that's why this is being done. And I would certainly hope that's not the case. So I go back to my original question, why is this being done at this time? And who started it?
I started,
Okay,
and the rumor is fake news.
Okay.
I've seen that rumor, I've heard that rumor.
that's why we have meetings, so everybody can
Absolutely.
be aware of what's going on.
And state that I'm quite certain who started the rumor, and I had no interactions with that person regarding my application.
I have no idea who started. Rumors,
Well,
they travel quickly and you never know the
So I'd
source.
like to put an end to it.
Okay,
Okay, I had dealings with Mr. Fellini, who's sitting back there, who showed up at my property about a year and a half ago. We had absolutely no issues with our interaction. As a matter of fact, I think he spoke at the
Is-
first reading.
he the person on the commission?
He's on the commission.
Okay, that's,
And he and I met at my property, and he actually is in agreement with me and stated as such publicly at the first reading of this ordinance that the commission has no right to involve itself in applications of residents that are before the DEP. And this was something that I thought added a level of bureaucracy that was unnecessary, that when a resident is undertaking the project and it's near the water, they have to deal with the water process.
Excuse me, we can't hear you.
We can't hear
We
you.
cannot hear what you're saying.
No.
When a resident undertakes a project, they have to go through a time-consuming and very expensive process. They have to deal with the borough's professionals, they have to hire their own professionals, their own engineers, their own wetlands experts, their own CAFRA experts. They need to submit the application to the DEP. This takes months, it takes years, it costs tens of thousands of dollars. I wasn't aware until I had a personal experience with an application that was in front of the DEP for a year and a half, that the Environmental Commission had the ability to interject themselves into the application process. As I stated, Mr. Fellini showed up at my door. He was very professional, very cordial. We had quite a long conversation, and it occurred to me at the time that this was unnecessary and was an unnecessary burden and presented maybe the opportunity for residents to have to undergo longer application times and more money. And my feeling is there are enough professionals looking at these applications, and anyone who's had to deal with the DEP knows what a bureaucratic behemoth they are. So as we discussed this at the first reading, basically, they've been acting as an advisory committee for the last 7 years. There are regulatory issues, regulatory requirements that haven't been followed. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but obviously it's a burden because they haven't been adhered to for years. So it was my position that we have these volunteers, they do important work, but they're serving in an advisory capacity, and I think that's more than enough. And I don't think it's fair to residents to have to deal with another layer of government when they're dealing with an entity like the DEP already. They're dealing with our borough engineer, they're dealing with the planning board. Our borough engineer agrees with me. He said we don't need a commission. They're functioning as a committee, they should be a committee. Mr. Fellini, who showed up at my property, feels the same way. We're not doing away with environmental oversight or environmental issues. The advisory committee is going to be the same members as a committee that are currently as a commission. They're going to serve in an advisory function and capacity as they've been doing. So that's where that originated from. The rumors are nonsense. Okay? It's fake news. I've heard them. I think it's despicable that something like that would be spread around. But that's the story. If you want to ask Mr. Fellini, I'm sure he'll back up my...
I have no reason to doubt you, none whatsoever. I do have a problem with the fact that once there is no commission, they serve the purpose. I understand the part about the bureaucracy, and not necessarily involved in your case, but in the future when developers come in, this makes it pretty easy for them to circumvent some of those rules that are in place. And I'm concerned that, given the fact that none of these people are on salary, and yes, we are all faced with burdens in place in government. I just personally feel that this isn't the way to go about this. I would like to see the commission maintain, and as you pointed out, the gentleman you dealt with seemed to be very respectful in that matter. I don't quite understand how, other than existing rules, the things that would have held you up, or anyone else for that matter. And you have these rules in place, and you eliminate the commission, you eliminate a layer of protection for the public and the environment. Whatever you decide is going to happen, but I think this should be rethought, given the circumstances of how it all occurred. Thank you.
My name is Anthony Forlini, which I was just referenced to. I live in Oceanport, Bridgewater Drive. Mr. Pronto's correct in everything he said about our conversations and so forth. There's a duplication here. I have a master's degree in environmental science from Rutgers. I have a BS from Rutgers in environmental science. And I own an environmental company in Oceanport, on the corner of Oceanport Avenue and Main Street, for the last 20 years. The problem we have is that the planning board does it, the engineer does it, and the council does the same thing. And what are we looking at? We're looking at docks that were built 30 years ago and saying, can they keep them or do they have to be removed? And there is no reason for that. What we should be concerned about is the fish kill we had in Oceanport Creek. We should be looking at ways to improve the quality of our environment instead of worrying about if somebody has a violation of the DEP, CAFA regulation, waterfront regulation. All they're after is money at this point in time. The docks, they're there. What are you going to do? Tell the person to take his dock out? So, you know, you really got to evaluate exactly what you're looking at, why you're looking at it, and how we can improve the quality of our life here. Because Oceanport Creek is going to fill in, and it's going to become a cesspool sooner or later. So why don't we concentrate our efforts on evaluating how to improve the quality of the water in the lake, in the creek, and so forth. Thank you. Yeah, go for it.
Hi, Tom Cox, 18 Hunters Run, and member of the Environmental Commission.
Mr. Cox, you've got to address us.
Okay, I can do that. All I have to do is turn around. So to the honorable members of the council and the mayor, I don't think that some of the statements that Councilman Proto made are quite accurate. For one thing, if the DEP is on the job, then the Environmental Commission is not going to step in and make them work harder or look harder at something. And in fact, I've been on the commission for 8 years, I haven't seen that happen. So that's kind of an imaginary scenario. Number two.
How's it imaginary when somebody shows up with their application to someone's property? Not me, anyways.
Well, that's what we
How
should
is it
do.
imaginary?
No, we're supposed to be
Okay.
looking at environmental
You're saying you
issues.
don't have
That's
the
what we
ability
do.
to DEP work
Excuse
on
me,
it, but
I have the floor.
just address
You
it.
can talk afterwards.
Thank you.
Let the gentleman speak, please. He asked a question.
If you asked the question, I answered it.
Okay. The other thing that was brought up was that in the past we did not follow all of the sunshine regulations, and that's true. But it's a trivial matter to do that, and we addressed it. In fact, I was going to place advertisements in 2 newspapers myself in January, but I was advised that that was best done by the borough clerk, who who better understand the Open Public Meetings Act, so that makes sense. What I'd like to say is the Environmental Commission, along with the Water Watch Committee and the mayor and council, starting about 20 years ago, were entirely responsible for getting the racetrack to clean up their act, literally. So the Shrewsbury River used to be not really swimmable in Branchport Creek during the racing season. And the Environmental Commission, Water Watch Committee, as I say, mayor and council back then forced the track to clean that up. That's what we've accomplished. We've accomplished an environmental resource inventory. And as far as duplication of effort, I think the NJAC representatives who are here will tell you that a large percentage of the boroughs and towns in New Jersey think that that's not a duplication of effort. That environmental commission is required in addition to the planning board and the council and town engineers who don't really have the environment first in mind. That's our job in the environmental commission. So I think that's all I have to say at the moment. Thank you.
Would any of that change if you were a committee versus a commission?
Yeah, for one
You wouldn't
thing,
have- you
site
wouldn't have
plan,
pursued the racetrack, you wouldn't have pursued, I'm going back to, you said 20 years ago, it was the environmental commission that went after.
I can't speak to that because I wasn't.
Okay, but I'm thinking that a lot of that same effort as a committee would be the same as a commission. What would have been different? I'm just speaking as.
Well, what's different, and Jack can speak to this better than I can. One difference is that a committee, as I understand it, does not get site plan, so that we don't know what developments are happening. So, for example, the Borough Hall site, we wouldn't get site plan for that, so we don't know what's going on there. So we have to go to Borough Hall and request the plan once they're public. So that's an extra step, not a saving step, but an extra step.
Okay. Thank you.
Richard.
Rich Breskis, 204 Comanche Drive. I'm the board's mayor's delegate to the mayor's environmental staff advisory committee. This is something that normally meets, supposed to be monthly, but it's usually maybe every 2 months. What's difficult in a situation like that is my comments, as well as those of Eatontown, Tinton Falls, are taken under advisement, only later to be presented by someone else to the full board. And it's a little bit awkward and frustrating that when you're in that sort of capacity, not everything gets carried forward that you might anticipate. So that's a little bit awkward. And let's say as that goes further, because that has a pseudo-environmental advisory board role in Port Monmouth. So I would sort of say that it makes it awkward that the town's planning board sees it so late in the cycle. And you can ask applicants for a form that they had to fill out and submit. This is something I asked the mayor to work out, that had a number of the standard environmental concerns addressed by the applicant, be reviewed by the mayor's staff before being brought forward. But it is a very different situation, I think, being in an advisory committee capacity there. On some of the other items, I'm one of the founding members of Oceanport Water Watch. It's probably maybe 30 years now I've been serving on that, uninterrupted, And that part is good. It's a borough expense item in terms of like testing materials and so on. But there are like small dedicated groups that provide that role. And I think that, Anthony's comments, I think the newest member of the Environmental Commission, and I feel that even though his credentials are very good, he doesn't necessarily speak for the entire commission in that capacity. Now, I am on the Oceanport Environmental Commission. That was intended to be the reporting mechanism, so it's almost like what I see at the mayor report the Environmental Advisory Committee staff items there to the Environmental Commission. It's carried forward by whoever our liaison is at that point. And I've mentioned every liaison that's served would be very willing to meet, at the councilman's pleasure, in one of the normal meetings. One of the things that I'm seeing in this current situation is that ANJAC has laid down like suggestions for and training materials for environmental commissions, and there's a corresponding document, training manual that they have for municipal officials. And a lot of the issues that have been raised in this are actually in the ANJAC materials. They're good in the sense that they hand out free books to the Environmental Commission members, but you're not obligated to attend classes. So in the case of the Oceanport Environmental Commission, I think in the last couple months, 3 members have attended that formal training. And one of the things that came up was the desirability of coming up with a reporting form that could be used during site visits. And they have very specific procedures and recommendations for visiting sites that then could be formally reported to the committee as a whole, or commission as a whole, and then passed on to the town council. So this is something that I believe Mike participated in the most recent meeting of the Oceanport Environmental Commission, and from my viewpoint, that would tend to alleviate a large number of concerns that people have in terms of advance notice, giving the applicant a chance to say yes or no to the visit at that time, or wanting to either be present or have some other person present during the walkthrough. Having done a number of the walkthroughs, I will say that a number of the applications that I've looked at have had either missing information, misleading information, or self-serving information. So even though it's a simple thing, it pays to have that walkthrough on applications. And during the time that these things are presented to the Environmental Commission, the vast majority of them, there's no need for an actual site visit. Like it's viewed saying, this application is strictly a planning board matter, there's no sense in doing it. And that's just done as a courtesy. Now the Environmental Commission has a member that sits on the planning board, and in the case of the current situation under New Jersey law, that person is the one that would be carrying the concerns, if there were any, to the time when that application would be presented to the public. So there's a chance for questions and answers. So I feel that, from my perspective, there's reasons to improve the process, improve the reporting information, but I'm really against the idea of just disbanding the commission, going to a committee, just because I do serve on similar things, and I feel that with the history in New Jersey, many of the original ones were set up as without the power that the later commissions adopted as the New Jersey statutes changed. So just personally for me, I would say more training, better communications, and an understanding. I would recommend to the council that consider the documents that ANJAC's prepared for environmental issues for municipal government. It's like kind of your side of the bench versus the commission side of the bench is worth considering. Thank you, everyone.
And can I ask a quick question? Your commission did not comment on Amendment 13 from Premier, where we got comments from almost every other commission and committee and town planning board.
Which one are we talking about?
That's the college.
I'm saying, which part of that?
There was no comments given to the borough from the environmental commission.
Okay.
Did you guys discuss it? Was there anything that came back, or was there no
The
discussion?
part of it that I see in the Femera portion of it?
I guess it comes from the borough clerk to you guys.
Right. Right. And so the parts of it that I saw just personally were as part of the Fort Monmouth portion of it, the Environmental Staff Advisory Committee, is they're mostly concerned about contamination, either known or unknown, trying to get rid of a large number of carve-outs that the mayor did not take possession of. So what I would see during that process is as the
I don't think we're
environmental.
talking about the same thing.
I think we have two.
I'm not the chairman of the environmental.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were.
No, I'm just a member.
Okay, then,
Yeah, yeah.
then.
So I can't speak to
Okay,
Bob
I'm sorry, I
Rose.
thought you were the
No,
chairman.
I'm the chairman of the, currently of the water line.
Got it, thank you. Then don't even worry about
Okay,
it.
all right, thank you.
Sorry, I thought you were the chairman.
Hi, good evening. My name is Elizabeth Ritter. I live at 45 Center Road in Randolph, New Jersey, but I am the Deputy Director of ANJAC, of which you have heard a little bit about. That stands for the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions. We were founded in 1969 after New Jersey passed the legislation that established environmental commissions in the state that allowed municipalities to do that. We've been training environmental commissions for 50 years now, and we hope to continue to do so. We really would like to offer our opinion that the Environmental Commission should not be demoted to a committee, if you will. This Environmental Commission has been active and busy for years, and if there are things that they need to work on, I heard the gentleman right before talk about that. Maybe there's some, ANJAC's happy to help negotiate that, work with you guys, talk to whoever we need to make sure that they're following the rules and that everything is done in a manner that everybody can appreciate. The discussion about development plans, adding and having another person doing something duplicating, the Environmental Commission is your local people whose only job it is to worry about the natural resources. So your engineer is great, your planning board is great, but the Environmental Commissions are the ones who, that's what they're gonna look at. For you guys, and for free. They're gonna look at these plans and make sure that everything looks right and offer recommendations and suggestions for protecting the natural resources in the town. Your Environmental Commission did this ERI, I can show it to you, in 2012. An ERI is an environmental resource inventory. It's just a listing of what's here, maps, lists, plants, trees, flooding areas, etc. And it takes a long time. They worked with a consultant. They had funding from ANJAC at the time, a little bit to help with that, but it was largely done by that commission. Takes a long time, and they did a lot of work, and it actually should be reviewed. It was done in 2012. In the next couple of years, they should be reviewing it and perhaps updating it for any changes. Things change in towns, and somebody needs to be looking at that, and you want them to be doing that for you for free. P.S. So I would like to, on behalf of ANJAC and the Environmental Commission, I really would hope that you would consider not passing this ordinance. Thank you. In touch. We do train anybody, by the way, anybody welcome to come to our trainings in the municipal government, so, thank you.
Mike Secan, 34 Riverside Avenue, Port. So, a very long time ago, I think Jeannie probably remembers this, I put one of the most expensive shed in Oceanport. I think most of you were not even on the council, or some of you were not even residents in town when this happened. It cost me more money than the shed cost me in terms of getting a CAFRA permit, putting an ad in the newspaper, and I think there was like $700-800 fee I had to pay. And this being that I have a very large lot and my shed was like going to be about 150 feet from the street. So I understand your frustration. I know it is a tough, and trust me, when DEP showed at my yard, and I being an architect and knowing all the environmental rules, and luckily it played out good for me, and when they told me it's going to cost me $25,000 a day till I restore the property to its original, or the wetlands, but luckily for me, I had made that decision on my own, and I stayed away from it. So I give you that. But that should not be the reason that, we all have to play by the rules. I played by the rules at that time. it cost me $2,000 for a freaking $1,400 shed. But I played by the rules. So now, what is the biggest problem? I give you even fake news too. But here's the problem. You're a sitting member of the council. And we have one guy who works as an environmental contractor in town. He shouldn't be on the environmental commission to begin with. There is a huge conflict of interest here. So just the way it looks, I think there is a problem. So it will behoove this council to just defer this until such time that there is a semblance of fairness here. This defies all semblance of fairness and due process. And for a commission that doesn't even cost us anything. It's an extra set of eyes, and especially with all the development going around across the street from me. This is just a big no-no for all of us. So I plead to all of you that use your good judgment and just, if this was making a huge dent in the borough's bottom line, this was a good thing to do. This is not helping anybody. I thank you.
My name is George Moffett, and I didn't realize it was going to be so cold tonight. 20 Pemberton Avenue, Oceanport, New Jersey. I'm at the very tail end of what I call Pemberton Creek, which is the parallel creek from Oceanport. And I almost got lost in the sandy swamp thing. All my goldfish I found the next day in the woods because they thought, free at last. Anyway, I would like to tell you a story. Mayor Rooney from Red Bank was representing a developer here before our planning board, the zoning board. And I mentioned to him, to the board, I said, the problem is that everything that we do, as small as it may be, is incremental. And when someone else does something dumb, and someone else does something dumb, such as, say, traffic issues, okay? The thing is that it becomes incremental to the point where we look out one day and say, where did all these darn cars come from? But they came from all these little incremental steps that we took for reasons that I do not know. Oh, and I also mentioned, I said to the planning board, zoning board, if you want to get through Red Bank at lunchtime, bring your own lunch. It's going to take an hour and a half. Well, Mayor Rooney almost had a heart attack with that. You can imagine that. My thing is this. We face right now some really serious problems with environmental issues. Whether it's fossil fuel or flooding or heating up the bay or fishes dying because, the fish weren't too happy in the waters that we left them, or whatever. Every one of those issues, we cannot point to you or your decision or either of you or anybody here. It just developed incrementally. So my argument is that, first of all, I would take this suggestion of having an advisory committee and throwing it out the window. Why? Because an advisory committee doesn't have the authority to do anything except write a report that's going to be filed away, what we call the file and forget file. And if you are a commission and you have certain statutory responsibilities, at least you don't go into the mayor and council as equals because you were all elected. They were not, they were appointed, but at least you have to listen to them. Now, I don't think for one darn minute that anything that we do here in Oceanport is going to, in any way, shape, or form, diminish the threats of climate change, global warming, whatever word you prefer. If the floods are gonna come in from the ocean, they're coming in, whether it's Democrat, Republican, or Marxist. So why are you changing this? From an advisory committee, they can write a wonderful report that goes, as compared to a commission that at least you have to pay attention to them. Now, my argument is this. We keep cutting back in New Jersey, in this country, around the world, every environmental protection that we have. We chip a little here, we chip a little there, and all of a sudden we haven't got it. We've seen that in the last couple of years. So, as far as the paperwork is concerned, whether this process or that process or this form was filled out or that form wasn't filled out, the slow down development is actually a good thing. Because I recall after Sandy came through and wiped out our entire coast, including half the homes in Oceanport, some dodo that works for the state in the recreation department, no, the development department, says, we have to build more hotels along the ocean so more people will come here. I said, moron, that's our problem. Okay? That's our problem. And any developer that comes in, and now here's my political concern. You may be offended, but this is my political concern. If you have an advisory committee where those individuals can be just let go if they become too much of a pain in the neck. For example, let's have a councilman who's a buddy with a developer and they're in New Jersey, could that possibly happen? Let us say this. If the person is serious, and if that person wants to do the job, and if that person has certain tenure, you don't want a committee. You want someone who's actually going to do the job and speak to power. Now, I know that mayors don't have too much to do, but even so, yes, speak to power. And so, I would urge you to stick to your commission. Do not keep cutting away incrementally, because you're going to have absolutely no effect on global warming or anything else. But if we have thousands upon thousands of other governments and other communities doing this, we'll never straighten out this mess. Oh, and here's the bad news. We all say that at some point we're all going to be dead. Well, we all know that. But at some point, the sun is going to explode in 5 billion years, and we're going to be dead anyway. Let's not push it. Thank you very much.
Thursdays. I said you're here Tuesdays and Thursdays. Please tip your waiters. Thank you very much.
We got 11 years left.
It took me a little while to get up here. I don't think I can be as eloquent as Mr. Moffett, but I'll. Kari Martin, 34 Heads Drive, in Oceanport. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'm on the Oceanport Water Watch Committee and have been on that for about 2 years. I'm a volunteer, just like the rest of the gang. And I feel that I would not serve on a committee like that if it was a burden to me. I like to use my experience, professional experience, my life experience in helping my community, and that is an outlet that I have found that allows me to do that. And I am thankful for that, but I also want to let you know that I think for the most part, volunteers wouldn't volunteer if it was going to be a burden to them. They want to be helpful. I also have a question for the council. I wanted to know if any of you have any education degrees in environmental science or policy. No. Okay, so That's one of the good reasons that we have the engineers, we have the scientists that are in all of these agencies, federal and state agencies, to be able to look at, use their experience to make sure that our projects and proposals are environmentally sound and follow environmental laws. It's no different than the Environmental Commission. They are local. They have a local knowledge of their community, of their resources that they study hard and are, in and out of all the time. It's their job to be able to inform the council, the planning board, and the other entities in town of those environmental factors and laws and regulations. So many of the people on the board, on these committees and at the commission have environmental degrees or environmental experience, or are lifetime environmentalists that can really inform and make a difference on these committees and commissions. I'm here tonight as a concerned Oceanport resident because I think the ordinance 998 is ill-advised, and I urge you to vote no on this ordinance for a number of reasons. I think it's imperative to have a strong environmental commission in Oceanport at a time of such change, with the numerous plans at Port Monmouth in various stages, and during a time when climate change and other environmental factors are affecting our communities. We just need to look at our waterways the past week, and the dead fish are still there after so many days. There are environmental signs all the time that we need to address in our town. It's essential that this local voice, as a commission, not a committee, as a commission, is a place to properly review all that is to come to our borough now and in the future. The proposed ordinance doesn't just change the name of the commission, it changes its ability to be effective and reduces its ability to hold projects and proposals accountable to the environment in our community. The Environmental Commission's representation on the planning board is essential and a key role for promoting adherence to environmental rules and regulations. Again, another set of local eyes. This representation will be lost with the demotion to an advisory committee, as was mentioned by other speakers. I didn't see in the ordinance anywhere it says where the planning board must provide copies of every proposal to the environmental advisory committee if it were passed. Whereas the planning board currently is required to do so now for Article 2, Section 250-13. Environmental commissions are an important place where our town citizens can go to discuss work on important issues. The citizens in town that are not involved in any of these commissions or committees rely on their fellow citizens to raise these issues and to do their work. We're all busy, all of us, but there are those that have committed themselves to these committees and commissions, and the citizens need them to have the strength that they do currently now as a commission. The Oceanport Environmental Commission volunteer their time, their expertise, and their extensive local knowledge. It is essential that this local group, as a commission, have the so-called teeth to influence and review local projects and proposals. Again, right now, they do submit their concerns and their recommendations on proposals. A lot of times it gets ignored, but they still do it. But they still have the opportunity to raise important questions and recommendations, and having that seat on that planning board gives them that level up that is so necessary. The state law allowing the environmental commissions to be established in municipalities was to ensure that at the local level, rules and regulations are be followed. It's for a good reason. State and federal agencies cannot possibly conduct extensive and specific reviews of every application for a development at a residence or in town. This is why the role of the environmental commission is so important. They can catch things that are amiss. They can, by an applicant or by an agency, they can make suggestions. And this is a good thing. It's another set of eyes. How would you feel if a project was done and say, oops, we missed that, and it caused flooding on someone else's property or other damage to somebody else? It can happen, anything has happened. So I think, we need to address that. We can't rely on the state and federal agencies to police everything, police every application and project. Our local citizens and their local expertise, as seen on the Environmental Commission in town, that we need to keep thoroughly engaged. We have environmental laws for a reason, okay? And we need to have our local community involved in making sure they're being followed. But one of the things that I noticed in the advisory committee ordinance is that I seem to think that at any time, it could be abolished without any public hearing or notice. I didn't see anything written in the ordinance that says if it could go away or not without public hearing or comments. That means it would be at the whim, the committee's very existence would be at the whim of any council at any time. So that's concerning to me. What message about environmental protection does this ordinance send to citizens, the state, and potential funders? Environmental commissions can help get funding, helpful and beneficial funding for our community. If you demote this and make it a committee, that sends a message to everyone that you don't want the environmental factors to have such a say in this town. Furthermore, this ordinance comes 2 short months after the council voted to close the town recycling center. Now, members of the council want to demote the environmental commission. These actions are moving Oceanport backward in a time when the town should be proactive on environmental issues and concerns. I fear what is next on the environmental chopping block. I fear for our water quality and natural resources, as well as my family's health and our ability to enjoy Oceanport, the wonderful Oceanport that it is. Finally, if you want to know more about the Environmental Commission or how any of the other committees works and what they're doing, attend a meeting. Talk to a member. Make suggestions and recommendations if you think something's not going right or not going as they should. Get answers before you make changes to it. You might be surprised to see the amount of work that is getting done behind the scenes and its value to its community. As I said, the volunteers wouldn't be there if it was a burden. They want to help, and we should welcome that. There are so many other functions and abilities for an environmental commission. I think they're doing a great job. I know many environmental commissions in this state have won awards for their programs and for their actions. I think we owe it to this environmental commission and the members on it to keep it a commission, and let's look and see what they do as they have done for so long. And I think the ordinance to establish our commission was in 1980, would that be correct? That's a long time and a great legacy of environmental eyes at the local level. So let's give these volunteers the opportunity to do what is set forth in the ordinance as a commission to locally protect our community, natural resources, and public health. For all of these reasons and so many more, I urge you to vote no on this ordinance. And I know personally that I will be looking at the council and whoever's up for re-election in this coming cycle about how we take action on environmental issues. And this is one thing you can do to make sure you're doing the environment right in Oceanport. Thank you.
Jeff Oak, 60 Pemberton. Jeff Oak, 60 Pemberton Avenue. And excuse me, I'm medicating right now, so if I forget what I'm going to say or lose track of what's going on, it might be this. So about the environment. First of all, I urge you guys to obviously vote no on this. This is becoming a hobby for me, making you guys look foolish. I'm a guy with cancer. I worked in a refinery. I know what goes into our waterways. It's disgusting. And you guys are going to remove a layer of oversight. I think that's a slap in the face to everybody here that shows up. With government, I've been to enough meetings. You guys know that. Guess what? If nobody's here, you guys are doing good. But guess what? The room's full. And that's why they're here. So don't do this.
Ron Sickler, 45 Mars Place. I'd like to make one more appeal to this council. You sat here for a long time and you've listened to the people of Oceanport express their desire to keep this the way it is. I'd like nothing more than I understand what you went through somewhat. I understand bureaucracy.
Don't misinterpret. Nobody did anything wrong.
But
I never inquired.
my appeal is to this council is consider what this town, its voters, have expressed to you. And Mr. Proto, I would love nothing more to see you cast the first no vote on this position.
I may lose my voice halfway through this, and for that you'll be thankful. Bob Kelly, 76 Gooseneck Point Road. I want to correct a couple of errors that I've heard tonight. Our property visits, and by the way, I've been on the environmental committee for well over 30 years. Did I say committee?
Yes, you did.
Maybe it was a committee way back here. When Walter Joyce was, Dr. Noah was walking around here. You know who I'm talking about, Joe. I heard that our visits could potentially cause the homeowner more money. I've heard that the borough spends a lot of their resources, a lot of their money, having their professionals do the same thing that we're doing. I've heard that it's a burden on the homeowner for us to visit them. I don't know how many site visits I've had, but there are quite a few. I always knocked on the door, introduced myself, and on occasion, since I didn't have to report back for a couple of weeks to the commission, if nobody was home, I'd come back at a different time. I always met the homeowner or the property owner in some cases. Over the years, we've caught a couple of things. By that I meant things that hadn't been corrected. Sooner or later, the DEP would have found it. And then the homeowner really would get socked. As we heard tonight, they come around and say, take it out, or it's 25 grand a day until you do it. Because your dock is 3 feet longer, or it's in a waterway. And they do that, and they do it with great regularity. I also read somewhere, attributable to one of the council members, that the public is unaware of the meetings. Well, the public should, and you should read the bulletin. It's in there every month. I went on the website today and looked at the archive that goes back to 2012, I think. Every one of them, the Environmental Commission is listed. All the public has to do is read. Over the years, I think I can only remember 2 council people. The latest was Michael Bryan, who visited with us. The only council members that we saw were our liaisons, and they were excellent over the years. I've heard comments about a lack of communications. Excuse me. Well, that was the job of the council liaison, not necessarily the commission itself. The council liaison is there to interpret what they hear and take it back to the council. I just made some notes, and that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to speak? Projecting up, sorry.
Alvin Radcliffe, 5 Riverview Road. I want to tell a story about something that I learned here in this room back in 6th grade.
we had to do the brand new Big Six paper, which was something that we never had to do beforehand. And I had to research something. And I sat here back when this library actually contained a lot of books and had to go through all of these encyclopedias looking for something that would interest me enough to write 6 pages about. And I came upon Love Canal. Love Canal was this horrible environmental disaster that happened, and the townspeople knew about it, and they couldn't do anything about it until it was too late. I think I just looked it up because when I was doing this paper, sorry if I'm so nervous, I don't like to talk about it in front of a lot of people, but when I was doing this paper, they still had not finished the cleanup. I just looked it up. They finished it in 2004, and it started in 1978. So it was a huge disaster. I think that if we sort of demote what we have now, if we demote what we have now, it would not be in the best interest of the Oceanport residents.
You're nailing it, keep going.
But I think it would not be in the best interest of the residents. If we demote to a committee instead of a commission, there is no one person that, say there was an extreme outrage, something was happening that you guys needed to know about. People, if it's a committee, may not feel comfortable enough bringing it to your attention. That way, if you have a commission, someone will get up in your face and say, this needs to happen. It's an added layer of protection. Seeing as there's so many things going on with the environment right now, we really want that. Well, that's all.
Hi, my name is Joseph Foster, 29 Bradley Avenue. There's been a number of people speaking, and they're going to be a tough act to follow. I'm not near as entertaining as they are, or informative maybe. My background, first of all, I have some environmental background myself. I was a program manager for a large defense contractor, doing work with the waste energy projects, as well as some advanced technology for chemical oxidation for ground contamination. Now, that gives me a little bit of an insight into the industry. We had somebody that works full-time in the industry here, but my perspective, again, is quite a bit different. I'm also the unique position of being the planning board member that is the liaison with the Environmental Commission. Now, truth be told, when I first joined the planning board, or was appointed to the planning board, it was not my selection to go on to the Environmental Commission. No offense to the commission members. However, I was assigned that position. I'm not exactly sure how the choice was made or anything, but I took it and I showed up at my first meeting. And I was very impressed with what I saw, much more so than I thought it was going to be. So much so, as a matter of fact, that I also volunteered to work with Tom on the Water Watch Committee. And it was a real eye-opener for me. They are an extremely busy bunch. Contrary to what you may have heard tonight from various sources, they're much more effective and less intrusive than it sounds like they were. My take on this is that having an environmental commission is a multi-pronged benefit. First of all, ANJEC has money. Where's Elizabeth? And it's only the commission that can apply for it. Okay, there's a $1,500 grant. And we were told, I took that training a couple weeks ago. And we were told to go ahead and apply for it. And that can be applied to various things. One of our main responsibilities, in addition to site plan review, is the fact that we have an environmental resource inventory that has to be taken. Now, that was also mentioned earlier. Elizabeth even had a copy of it, and it's going to be up for review again shortly. Now, the resources that we're talking about, yeah, we can pay our professionals $150 an hour or whatever the rate is, and they're going to do a lot of work, but they will not have the in-depth knowledge about the town as much as we do in the environmental areas. That I can guarantee you. No, it's not It's not a slight on our engineer. He has to be all things to the town. But getting down in the weeds and understanding some of the environmental issues that we're tasked with is not necessarily in his wheelhouse. So I think based upon that, we're saving the town a lot of money. And again, your pinch your pennies up there, you're looking at a chance to maybe gain control of something that, or a little more control that you feel you may not have right now under the current configuration. But I can assure you that you're getting your money's worth, and that we're there at your shoulder trying to help you do your jobs better. And now you can take that for what it's worth. You know, personal issues aside, that is what our job is, and that's what we're trying to do. Now, finally, let me just say that I've been on the planning board here for about a year and 4 months or whatever. Before that, though, I was 10 years zoning board of adjustment in Long Branch, and I was the vice chair on that for a number of years as well. So my perspective on these issues is not unique just to Oceanport. I've seen this in Long Branch. We had environmental concerns in Long Branch, many of them. Contamination issues. We have contamination issues in this town. And it's something that people have to kind of stay on top of. It's not something that's posted on a wall someplace where you automatically know about. We have an insight and we can be part of the solution as opposed to being seen as part of the problem. Thank you.
Hello, excuse me, Adam Kiernan, 293 Portapeck Avenue. So first I just want to thank all of you for serving our town. You know, I know that it's quite a commitment, and I know that there are lots of meetings, and believe it or not, this is the first one that I've ever been to. I married someone that is third generation Oceanport. You know, like her grandfather was here, her dad is here, and, you know, she grew up here. She needed to move all the way to West Long Branch when she married me. It was very traumatic. You know, and, you know, like 2 or 3 years later, suddenly I find myself in Oceanport. I'm like, what happened? But frankly, I'm very glad that I did. This is a very special place. This is a very, I'm so thankful. We have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old at home that just, I'm so glad that this is the environment that we get to raise them in. The thing about this is that I want them to be able to live here too. I'm not concerned about the next couple of years. I am concerned about what Oceanport looks like 30 years from now. And one of the things about all of you is, one of the ways that you serve is that you're concerned for the well-being of Oceanport, and there are so many different facets of that. You know, and I know that you guys want it to be an environmentally sound place. You want to be an environmentally good place, but that's not your only concern. There are many other concerns that you're trying to manage too. You're trying to manage the finances, you're trying to keep the taxes at a reasonable level, and all these other things. I think that having a set of people with power that are just committed to this one thing is important, because there's no way, and you know, if I was in your position, I'd say this about me too. There's no way for there not to be a bias on this. So my hope is that you guys vote no on this. And and to go back to how I started, this is my very first meeting. There's a reason that this is my very first meeting. I think that this is a big issue, and I don't think I'm the only one that does. This will be deciding how I vote come, you know, the next elections. Like, and, you know, again, not very civically minded, I'm sorry. The last council members, I was just like, hey, that name looks nice. That's not gonna happen this time. And I don't think I'm gonna be alone in that. And so please, vote the right way on this. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ed DeFilia. I'm actually your neighbor from just down the road in Ocean Township, and I'm here tonight as a trustee on the board of Amgen. In Ocean, I also serve on my planning board. I volunteer on the environmental commission. I've had the opportunity over my years, having been born and bred in New Jersey, to serve on a couple of environmental commissions. I can't stress enough how important a commission is versus a committee. There are a lot of committees and a lot of towns all over this state that have really good ideas and they're passionate, and they come up with ideas, and they submit them, and they get lost. They do. But environmental commissions, they have a statutory obligation to not only be very serious and intentional about the work that they're doing, but they have a seat on the planning board. The concerns that that committee comes up with, the time and care they take to review site plans, to use their local knowledge that DEP doesn't have. And I mean, DEP looks at the regulations, they look at their maps, they look at their data, but they don't know your community. Your neighbors know your community. And so when they share those concerns and they have a voice to be able to weigh in on site plan applications, they're helping choose how Oceanport's going to develop. And you've heard from a lot of your neighbors, that's something they're concerned about. And as I've seen it play out in town across New Jersey, in my professional work, I've had an opportunity to work with dozens of environmental commissions all over the state and environmental committees. The difference between the two is stark. So I strongly urge you to keep the commission as a commission. There have been a lot of very valid concerns raised about how your environmental commission is being run. I would suggest that you work on fixing those and make your environmental commission even stronger and a better resource for your town instead of devolving it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Please pardon me because I'm not knowledgeable about the changes that are going on, but my gut tells me it's not a good idea to make the change.
If you can name that, just
Kevin Cornick, 22 Genesee. All right?
proceed.
But let me ask you a question, and I ask this respectfully. Councilman Fredo?
Yes.
Has this come about because you were unhappy with something or you did not agree with something?
Not at all.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So how did this change come about, or this proposed change? Can anyone tell me?
I think I stated it earlier, that when I was going through my specific application, and I was surprised to learn the Environmental Commission had the authority to interject itself, it opened my eyes that this was just, I felt, another unnecessary layer of bureaucracy that was occurring to the residents that were seeking to submit applications. Again, we go through the borough engineer, we go through our planning bureau, we go through the NJDEP, we have numerous wetlands experts, engineers looking at all these plans, and I felt that as any resident, that to be put in a position where someone who shows up after looking at an application, not knowing the 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years that went into an application, has the ability to torpedo an application, not on purpose, but by not knowing the rules and regulations, or not having the relevant information in hand. And I just felt that it was unnecessary to have that kind of layer involved in the process.
So
that's where this came from.
So that's different from you not liking something?
You asked if I was upset with something that happened. The only thing that I was made aware that there is a step in this process that I wasn't aware of previously. When I realized there was this other step, I felt it was duplicative and unnecessary. I think I spoke to the mayor at the time, who, if I remember correctly, agreed with me. I spoke to other members of council who agreed with me. I spoke to our professionals who agreed with me. I spoke to our clerk. This just didn't happen. I woke up one morning and said, I want to change the environmental commission.
You're putting words in my mouth.
No, I'm not putting words in. I'm making a statement. I didn't put words in your mouth. I'm
Well,
saying,
it sounds like this came about from an experience you had. Is
the
that
genesis of this, so I'm
Listen.
trying to give you the information,
I'm just asking the question.
and I'm trying to answer.
It sounds like, well, you're answering it in a way favorable to yourself, it seems. I'm just asking, did this come about because of an experience you had? Maybe that's a better way to ask the question.
Or that anyone else has had.
This came about as I stated. How many different ways can I say it?
Well, I think you did. Thank you very much.
You come on up. the
yes,
speaker.
Governor. Right. My name is Colleen Hobson. I live on Steeplechase Court in Kimberly Woods. I live on the isthmus of the peninsula of Ocean Court. The question I have you gotten many complaints from anyone regarding the commission?
I've heard a similar issue that Councilman Pro had, and I think I discussed it with the mayor, who had heard a similar issue also.
Is that an occurrence of someone saying that they had a problem with the commission?
Not necessarily a problem, no.
What the issue is because they thought that the commission might be able to intercede in their application?
They thought it was an overstep.
They thought that it was an overstep, that they had the ability to do so, but not that they did?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. So it's the thought of, not the action of.
What I heard was the thought, or just that they were doing that.
So this is being done because of the thought of.
No, that's not fair to say.
Okay, well, that's how I'm hearing it.
You may be hearing that, part of that from Councilman Proto. I mean, my thought process is that there's duplication, there's replication, there's some cases being triple. I was jotting down some notes of some of the people who were speaking. Bureaucracy came to mind. It's another level of bureaucracy upon our residents. They're acting as a commission, yet we got no comments on any of the amendments from Fort Monmouth 13 and 14, of which we heard from many of our professionals, all of our professionals. It was kind of strange to me that an environmental commission would not comment on something that was being done at Fort Monmouth.
So that is different than what Mr.
No, but I think he was just explaining his.
I understand.
Yeah, his particular. I'm just saying.
But I'm hearing.
Yeah, no, I'm just talking about what I was jotting down as why, one of the reasons and what we were talking about. Do you realize there are other towns in this area, some of them very close to us, that are on oceans and rivers that have no environmental commissions or committees? I thought that's an absolute fact. If anybody doesn't believe it, you can look it up.
So what?
Folks, you can't yell out if you want to.
That's an absolute fact. Seabright does not have an environmental commission or a committee. Union Beach does not have an environmental commission. All we're doing, and the commission that we have is acting as a committee today. Nothing is going to change in what they do. Nothing. They're going to have the same purview to do what they've been doing, to comment, to not comment, to put together advice to the council. In my opinion, it's not a change. It's not a major change.
Then why do it?
Why do it? I'm not going to answer. I'm speaking to the person that's up here.
Yeah, so why the change? Because I'm not hearing a real.
Duplication, replication, bureaucracy.
Believe me, I understand bureaucracy. I handle environmental impact statements for projects that dealt with New York City, New York State, New Jersey, and the federal government simultaneously.
Yeah.
If you want to talk to somebody who understands bureaucracy.
This is
I
pure
understand
bureaucracy. I can tell you liability is another issue, where we can be sued based on the decision made by an environmental commission, much like the planning board, much like the council. That's an issue.
And if you went into a committee, that would not occur?
They would be advising the council, they wouldn't be making decisions on their own, correct?
We don't make decisions. Yeah, we don't make decisions.
Okay, my concern is, I'm Ocean Ports Peninsula, and forget Seabright, forget Keyport.
Seabright, I would say, is probably a more devastating town with the ocean and the river.
No, I understand.
Okay, so they have these concerns. I mean, so we're not, what I want to make perfectly clear in my decision is we're not eliminating the environmental overlay. We're changing it from a commission to a committee.
Yeah.
Just, to me, it's simple.
I hear what you're saying. I just think that we're blessed to have it.
Absolutely.
And Seabright and Keyport not having any kind of environmental committee or commission, and Florida.
There's other towns too. And,
Yeah, I'm here.
I just brought a couple. It's not uncommon. I'm glad we have it. I'm glad we have a water watch committee at Testwater. I'd like to know where the fish die. I mean, there's things that are needed. Then there are other things that are duplicated and bureaucratic that are not necessarily. New Jersey has some of the most stringent regulations in the country, as you probably know. Yeah. You do. And adding another layer of local people who can just, you know, and I'm not saying they have, believe me, I never said they came in and stopped anybody, but they have that ability to. And based on that fact, say this happens, and they're gonna say it's never happened, and that's true. But if they've come in and something like, they get a dock approval somewhere from the DEP, the planning board approves it, and then the environmental commission comes in and doesn't like something about it, wants to cut a foot or two short. It's much like a decision made on the planning board, for some reason, like, you're open to a lawsuit. That's a legal liability as a
Well,
commission.
so it's liability the
But
primary.
that's another reason, I'm giving you ask a reason, I don't have primary reasons, I have about 10 reasons that I listed.
Should I hear your 10 reasons?
Yeah, bureaucracy, duplication, nothing's gonna change between the commission and the committee. They haven't made any comments on any of the Fort Monmouth amendments, while other committees have. Some towns don't have any at all, they don't think it's necessary, we do. I mean, you know, what do you wanna hear from me? I don't know what you wanna hear.
I just asked. You said there were 10. Some of
1,
them
2,
sounded-
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I'm sorry, 7.
And some of them sounded repetitive to me.
Duplication and bureaucracy,
Yeah,
that's
Duplicative and
repetitive.
repetitive would have been.
Duplication. Okay, so 6, I mean, whatever, liabilities, I mean, I don't know what you wanna hear, you wanna hear 11? I mean, what do you wanna hear from me?
Not, you just answered my question.
Okay, because I'm
As best
trying to
as you
understand
could.
what you're trying
Yeah.
to,
No, I'm trying
I'm
to
just
really,
trying to.
I'm trying to really understand the
Understood.
thinking that went into the change. And I'm just concerned that I think it would be disadvantageous for this
Understood.
community to step down from a commission to a committee. And so I would prefer if we
Understood.
voted not to make the change. That's all.
Thank you.
Anybody else who wants to speak?
I'm not a resident, so if anyone wants
Name it after.
My name is Julian Klein. I live in Ocean Township, but I spend so much at number 5 Riverview that I basically have moved in. So I just have a few simple questions, just a couple of little ones. First of all, putting any kind of egos aside, please. Was there anything in this beyond an inconvenience you weren't aware existed? Pronto County.
You have to expand it.
You said that as you were looking to do this project, that you came across that there's this extra layer of bureaucracy that you didn't know existed.
Yes,
That's correct?
yes.
Now, if you went to another state that had a rule about you can't wear high heels on a Sunday, and someone got arrested for that, does their ignorance of that law, however absurd, absolve them from following the same rule as anyone else?
It's not ignorance of the law when it comes to
That's
environment.
absurd as your analogy.
I admitted that, and it is a hyperbolic example.
Right.
But my point is ignorance of a law
It's not
something
ignorance
that
of the law. I became aware of something, I complied with it. Again, no one did anything wrong. As a member of council,
I'm not saying you did something
as I become aware
wrong.
of things, I try to determine as to whether or not this is something that's necessary for the residents of the town. I brought it to the attention of my fellow councilmen. They seem to be in agreement. We introduced new things. Everyone's getting a chance to issue their comments. We're listening, we're taking it into consideration, and we'll have a vote.
Okay, but yes or no? You didn't know this was a rule. You didn't know that this process existed. But once
I
you
did not
found
know that the
out,
environmental commission had the authority to intercede into an application that was before the DEP. No, I did not.
okay, thank you. My second part is, you mentioned that other, Councilman Iris, you mentioned that there are other towns that do not have a committee, do not have a commission.
Right, that's what it is.
So another example would be if every town around you is a slum, do you want to be the same as the slums around? Would you want better for the people you represent?
Don't understand, I mean, again, the analogy you need, but what I was saying is there's other towns that have nothing. We're not doing nothing. We're continuing along a same path that we're currently continuing.
But you're implying that because these other towns
No,
don't
no, no,
have
I
it.
used that as an example when people were talking about a lot of towns had commissions. I said a lot of towns have nothing. I mean, you could, commission, you can say anything you want to say. I mean, I'm
Okay.
telling you that's a fact.
Uh,
I didn't say Oceanport should have nothing.
Okay, well, you're changing things. You elect here, this is your responsibility.
That's not nothing. It's going from a commission to a committee where they're
Okay.
already doing the same work. Nothing's gonna change.
Okay, so now, you're saying some have nothing, but we'll still have something. If I were to,
That's actually not what I said. What I said was, somebody said that a lot of towns have commissions. I said, nothing, some towns have nothing. It was just a response to a question that a lot of towns have commissions.
Okay,
I didn't say that that means we should have nothing and we should have a committee.
okay, so let me put it in another way.
Please, because I'm not
Yeah.
following what you're trying to say.
I'm a teacher, so I'm gonna have to work with you on this one. Let's say there's a town with
I
a
feel bad for
full-
our schools.
Well, I teach online, I teach people second language, lawyers, engineers,
Lawyers.
biochemists, also got some. But regardless, let's say that one town with a full commission is a pack of Oreos. And one with a committee has maybe 3. Is that really better by
I
much than?
don't even
than
know
one
where
has
you're
nothing?
heading on this. What I
So
said
doesn't
is.
like Oreos.
What I, no, I do like
Likes
Oreos. What I did say was in response to a comment that there are many towns that have commissions, some towns have nothing. I did not say we should have a committee, we shouldn't have a commission, we should have nothing.
Okay, my
It
point.
had nothing to do with Oreos and M&M's.
Okay, so my point is, when you compare something
It wasn't a
to
comparison,
nothing,
it wasn't a
that's
comparison to
not a
nothing.
high step
That's not a-
above.
I don't know where you got the comparison. Somebody said that a lot of towns in the area have commissions. I said a lot of towns have nothing. I didn't say what Oceanport should or shouldn't do. That was not what was said.
No,
There
you're
was no-
saying, don't complain
please
because
don't
we're
put
giving
words
you
in my mouth.
this.
Please don't put words in my mouth. That's not what I said. I did not
Okay.
say don't complain because we're doing it.
Okay, so I'll take a step back. You're
Back to
saying.
Ocean, I hope.
I'm sorry, I'm hurting your feelings.
Believe me, you're not hurting my feelings.
Am I making you throw a tantrum? I'm
All
sorry.
right, sorry.
I step back, as I said. I will step back. I'm almost there. Anyway, what you are saying.
You don't,
by-
please don't tell me what I'm saying.
Okay, what I'm hearing you
Thank you.
say, is that while some have nothing, fair, that some places have nothing, and we currently have a commission in place, and just because some have nothing, any step above that is still better than nothing. Is that something I'm possibly hearing?
No.
Mhm. Okay, and then one more question. I did hear someone raise the point that, well, one, this doesn't actually cost you anything, but then I also heard complaints of bureaucracy. Are you following this paperwork yourself to do the processing of going to these homes, doing the reports? Councilman Proto, are you yourself going door to door, filling out this paperwork, looking into every nook and cranny, making sure everything is safe for people and the environment and things being possibly harmed? Are you personally typing in the forms? So you found something that you didn't know about, inconvenienced you.
We're going there again?
I am. I am, because you don't have to do the paperwork. You don't have to do the legwork.
Gotcha.
You ask for help. You don't do it yourself.
Got it, thank you.
All right.
Roseanne Letson, 37 Morris Place. I cannot speak as eloquently as most of the people ahead of me.
about the topic. I don't know as much about it as I need to, but I can tell you this. You were elected to represent the people in this town. There is a room full of people here right now, only one of which has agreed with your position on this thus far. And he has been extremely rude to the other speakers throughout the meeting, making comments sarcastic, loud. One person out of a room full of people agrees with your opinion. Everyone else, obviously, does not. You were elected to represent the best interest of this town. You are hearing the best interest of this town. Please vote accordingly.
Hi, my name is Susan Koperzak, 57 Bridgewater's Drive. I agree with your position, so there's two of us. I've been in the environmental industry for 36 years, 20 of which I've owned my own business. I have an environmental engineering and a civil engineering degree from Syracuse. So I do have a lot of environmental background and experience. I've worked for a major oil company. I've worked for Jersey Central Power Light as an environmental engineer. I worked for a major engineering company that wrote most of the engineering books, Mike Capinetti, for wastewater treatment, nuclear power plants. So I've had a lot of experience in industry. I have a question. You brought up a really good point regarding liability. If you're a commission, and you have people on the commission who aren't degreed, who don't have the education, don't have the background, aren't environmental, and they're making recommendations. They may not make decisions, but they make recommendations. How does that affect the liability? How does that affect the town?
As recommendations, it wouldn't be a problem. If they're making decisions, it could be a problem, and a commission could make decisions.
Well, if they make a recommendation, let's say you take it as a decision.
If they make a recommendation, DEP could be sued, correct?
Yeah, you could be sued, definitely, absolutely. So I think you have a big liability with the commission. There may be people who've been there for 30 years. And no offense to your 4-hour education group thing that you run, your whatever you are. You don't learn environmental in 4 hours.
So rude.
I'm sorry, you don't learn environmental in 4 hours, or whatever you do. You do not learn
We're all
environmental.
responsible for the environment. Thank you for your lessons.
Excuse me, let's.
I give you, excuse
I have a
me.
week to wait, so I'm having
Excuse
a
me, you had your chance. You had your chance, sir, please. Thank you.
You guys are all being lied to.
Whatever.
You guys are all
Jeffrey
fucking
Lee,
fools.
Please, whatever. Yeah, which I am. So, I do have a concern. I believe that, yes, people can learn, but I think that some of these issues that you're facing in this town, especially the fish kill, which is a result of the brown algae growth, which is a result of the silting that's going on, which is a result of all of the runoff that you're getting from people's yards. People, you've got True Green, you've got ChemLawn, you fertilize, all of that's going into the river. The silting, it's adding to the nutrients in the river, it's adding to the algae, and that's what caused the fish kill. Do you have people on the commission who have the ability and the knowledge to understand that and to look into that? So I take offense to the man who said it was a conflict of interest to have people with this kind of background on your commission. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, you need the people with that technical ability and the knowledge. Okay, that's it. But I do have I have a real concern about the legalities of people who are not degreed and licensed. I mean, I have many licenses. I have many licenses, background checked, FBI, fingerprinted. It takes a lot of time to become, where you are in environmental.
Thank you.
She runs a $20 million fund.
I don't care.
And she works
She's
for
got a
free?
vested interest.
Hi again, Tom Cott, 1800 Road, Environmental Commission. I believe I've heard twice tonight from council people that the Environmental Commission makes decisions. Not true, not true, not true. We advise. Thank you.
So what's the problem with being an advisory committee if you're making advice now?
I was gonna explain how.
Okay, you got it. That Ellen thing, Ellen's got it.
I have it, but
Good, you got it.
Oh, 38 Brooklyn Circle, Ocean Court. I was looking at the new ordinance that you proposed, and you were asking, we're not making any changes to the ordinance, things are gonna continue as normal, and it's just going to be a committee versus a commission. And that actually really isn't true by the ordinance that you have put forth. So the ordinance that you're saying now is the environmental committee is going to not get the site plan right away, they're gonna get it after it's already approved, then they're gonna give their recommendation to the council, and then, I don't know what the council's gonna do with it, it didn't really say. And then, right now, the process, just so you know, is that the environmental commission will get the site plans when they're submitted. So Jeannie will give it to them, they look at it, they have their meeting, they give their recommendation to the planning board before anybody comes before them. So, for instance, if somebody's coming up there, the planning board will have a little heads up to say, hey, why don't you ask this? Hey, why don't you find out about this? Hey, ask the engineer what they're gonna be doing about the wetlands. That's what they're doing. And then, so anything that they find can be addressed before anything's approved. So in this way, it actually protects all the residents here, because they're protecting us. They're protecting people from encroaching on our wetlands. I've seen, in years on the Environmental Commission as a council liaison, I've seen instances where somebody's building a dock and they're building it really close to their neighbor, and one dock's going this way, the other dock is going this way. The Environmental Commission will say, hey, you know what? The neighbor over here can't pull their boat in to access their dock. And then they'll say something to them, they'll make a little adjustment in their plan, and then all goes on. I have never seen that anybody said, hey, absolutely not, you're not going to pull this, it's going to cost me so many more thousands of dollars to do whatever. And there's no delay. There's no layer of bureaucracy, there's no duplication of services. They're actually looking at our environmental resource inventory and then comparing it to what we already found out, and we researched and where we delineated all of our environmental resources and applying it to the site plan that was put forth before them. And you're not gonna have that. I don't think that from them doing their report, giving it after the fact, and the planning board probably already met, and then giving it to you guys, who is gonna be stepping up, and it's gonna be too late. And I think that's a big flaw in your ordinance. And then there was another thing that you mentioned in the ordinance about unofficial coordinate with unofficial bodies at the local, state, and federal level. What does that even mean? Unofficial. Thank you.
Mark Patterson, 40 Itasca Place. I have no opinion in this matter. I don't know enough about this. I mean, usually I would tend to say whoever's on the committee, it's what they want, but that's neither here nor there. Where my concern is, although you guys have a quorum tonight, which I commend you for, you're not fully represented, and I think to make such a big decision, everyone should be here and weigh in on the matter. And I would ask that the matter is tabled until you have further representation and have all your council people here.
Anybody else wish to speak?
Joseph Foster, 29 Bradley Avenue. I'm going to make this real quick, just to clear things up a little bit. As far as the regulatory and being sued because we're not quote-unquote professionals, I can assure you that what I've seen, what's transpired since I've been on the Oceanport Environmental Commission, anything that had site plan requirements, I brought a question. I did not bring a decision. And that is the way I've handled it, the reporting. The group, as they went through the entire site plan, whatever the concerns were, if it was a planning board issue, that was raised. The engineer for the applicant, as well as our engineer, weighed in on it. The vote that took place would stand up in any court. I'll tell you that right now.
Joe,
so,
can I ask you a question
sure.
procedurally, not having any experience with this? You're provided with a site plan application. Walk me through what actually happens.
Well, the site plan, unfortunately, a lot of the site plans get to us very late. Okay, but by the time we get the site plan, we review it, we look at the environmental issues, we look at topology, we look at, you know, if there's an issue with plantings or water, anything to do with water, it becomes something that we look at. From a planning board perspective, I'll look at it from the variances, and if there's a question that regarding,
I want to stick with, so the environmental commission meets and discusses the particular concerns they have with a plan. And then what emanates from the commission to the planning board? Is it a directive? Is it a series of questions? Is it a decision? What is presented to the planning board?
the way I've been handling it, I do not take a report, I take the concerns as I understand them, and I apply it in the application as we're hearing the application.
In your capacity as a planning board member?
Yes, only in that capacity. I'm not the expert witness, I'm not the, you know, I don't even bring up the fact that it's the Oceanport Environmental Commission. It's a concern that we look at. If it's water runoff, we may not be getting applications, they may not go into that. So if it's not being presented and has not been addressed, I'll ask about what the runoff plan is. Okay, so does it affect the neighbor? Is there a wetlands issue? You know, we've had applications like that, and they've been satisfactorily resolved to all everybody's perspective. So I'm not sure where the complaints are coming from, and I'd love to hear the complaints directly. I'd also like to know who, that they can come to our commission if they have a concern. They're more than welcome to come. They are advertised, contrary to what a lot of people might think. So, you know, nobody's turned away. So that's all I want to say.
I just wanted to clarify one thing.
Sure.
The plans do not get too late. They get to you guys the same time they get to everybody else when we're deemed complete. Jeannie, is that accurate?
Correct.
So nothing.
We have one meeting a month.
Oh, that's
So
that's timing. That's not.
Exactly.
You're not getting them late from the borough. You're getting them the same time.
Exactly.
Okay. That's all I was.
So, but nothing from the commission, nothing in writing is provided to the planning board. It's you're going back as the liaison or the environmental commission member on the planning board. So like a decision being made or something like that.
Things are captured in the minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
But that,
And for me, I take my own notes, you know, if it impacts me, what my responsibility is as I see it, that's.
so if the environmental commission has a specific concern about a specific project, it's incumbent upon you to go back to the planning board or whether it be a memo that comes from the environmental commission to the planning board?
No, we haven't needed that. Okay. Something major now, something like the school, I know Rob, Mr. Proto has been concerned about it, as are all of us. The first phase, that was a different animal. The concerns that we have, I think, are down the road if they come back. But again, the environmental issues would be brought up at that point. And there are some significant concerns.
Joe, but no one provided to the council or to the borough any environmental concerns on Amendment 13. There were no comments made.
We got that, well, again, all I can remember is that when we discussed it, I think it was, the date was due, so. Okay, for whatever reason. But the other ones we did have comments and they were sent back.
11 and 14, I don't think we received that.
We've not, the environmental commission chairman is emailed the plan amendment along with, at the same time I do the borough engineer, the borough planner, and all the other people. And all the way back to amendment 11, we've never received anything from the environmental commission to include with the council's response to Famira. So I think that's what they're saying.
I can't remember, 11, it goes back too far, but there may not have been any major concerns that we've had environmentally. There may have been. USTs, we talk about UST, we talk about those things, but, you know.
Recently, 13 and 14. There was nothing.
13 was the college and 14 was Somerset.
Yeah.
There were no comments from the environmental. I'm just saying, there were. Yeah.
Well, okay, there's one other point. This is kind of an interesting point. Some of the commissions actually have paid members that do minutes and things like that, as well as an engineer. And again, you guys are getting us on the cheap, and I think that's something we should factor in. So if we miss a couple of things, we're all volunteers and
We understand, it's not it wasn't meant as a criticism.
Okay.
Thank you. We saw you before.
Yes, I'm trying to get a handle on this and trying to get a summary of what it is. You know, what it is that we're trying to deal with. And I'm hearing three things. One is that there's the liability issue. If a bad decision is made, the town could be held, the borough could be held liable. But so far, I've heard that the commission has advised only to date. So therefore, is liability still a concern? The next thing that I keep hearing is the fact that it sounds like the commission fell short on providing a FEMARA review, or the FEMARA reviews. And that's percolating through this discussion. The other thing that I heard, and it's been said several ways, but it's still the same thing, the notion that the commission could affect an application, but not that it has. There is no evidence that it has affected an application. And that is the same thing as saying adding the bureaucratic layer. Those are the three things. That's what I'm hearing that have brought this to the fore. Is there anything else that has brought this to the fore? Meaning changing a commission and making it a committee. That's it.
Well, there are differences between the proposed ordinance and the existing ordinance. There's practical and I think philosophical differences between the two.
Okay.
Under the current ordinance, you have powers that are A through H. Under the current ordinance, there are different powers that are removed where plan, implement, and inform the public about local environmental programs, recommend to the planning board plans and programs for inclusion in the municipal master plan and the development and use of such open areas. And the other two that we deleted were G, manage, donated, or purchase lands for conservation and environmental purposes and operate environmental programs. And H, act as a coordinating agency of the community on conservation and environmental matters, and as a liaison between the municipality and regional, county, state, and federal agencies administering those needs. The other practical change would be how the members of the committee are appointed. Under the statute, the mayor's appointments under this, it would be mayor's appointment with the vice and senate council, consent council, and then the mayor would get to name two alternate members. But that's pretty much a summary of what the changes are. The environmental commission there's also an alteration to a second chapter 250 -13, and that's the one that the planning board shall make available to the environmental commission an informational copy of every application development to the planning board. Failure of the planning board to make such informational copy available to the environmental commission shall not invalidate any hearing proceeding. That goes the way the horse and buggy because there's no longer going to be a referral. And those are the practical changes.
So is this going to be postponed, or we have to decide that?
What happens is when we conclude the public hearing, then the council gets to discuss what's going to happen. They can either move to a vote and vote on it, or they can move to table it, or move to do anything.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to mention something related to the environmental staff advisory committee on the 4th, okay? Like a typical situation that happens is they'll have identified areas of concern. Like let's suppose, for example, on the college grounds, right? That's one of the things. So where that starts off is they'll say, okay, here's the contamination. They require then the Army to Mr. Mayor doesn't want to accept, yes, please.
Just so it's clear for the purpose of the
Yeah,
recording, your name is?
Rich Gruskus, 204 Comanche Drive. You're a delegate to the.
I was getting the evil eye from the clerk.
That's okay, not a problem. So what'll happen, as they're going through the properties, it's basically the Army's responsibility to identify and correct contamination and other items like that. So for example, when they were going through the college properties, part of it was cleaned up, part of it was either still under investigation, later gets cleaned up. And then what ends up happening, the delegate from New Jersey DP gets a copy from the Army saying they're requesting no further action. They've completed the essential elements to have uncontaminated property. At that point, NJDP can confirm and say no further action. Only then does FEMARA accept that property. So as my participation in this committee, I'm very interested in seeing how are they doing on properties in Oceanport, identifying and then correcting suspect areas or actually known contaminated areas. So when I go back then to the environmental committee, I will tell them this one has been cleaned up from an environmental contamination viewpoint. This area is now clean. So in a sense, that's the questions that they have for me in some of these applications that are coming before. At that point, it becomes, from our viewpoint as the Environmental Commission, it becomes a planning board issue, right? So it's almost like, is there an environmental concern or is it a planning board issue, land use? So I just want to make that clear that it's kind of an odd situation I'm reporting back with on a month-by-month basis. For example, the most recent one, I handed off to Mike O'Brien, my new council liaison, the results, maybe a 2-page summary of everything that was affecting Oceanport properties that were under review either by the Army, FEMARA, or NJDP, which is a clarification at that point. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Gary? And you have to give your name and address. Scoot on over here.
Corey Martin, 34 Heads Drive. Just to be brief. The mayor pointed out some of the differences if you take both ordinances and put them next to each other. It's more than the name change, as he outlined. What I want to make clear is one of the most important ones is the Joe Foster's role of the Environmental Commission representative on the Planning Board. That cannot be understated. That is a major difference in the ordinance, and that is what loses the environmental impact in our community, in the decision making here. While they're not giving you a decision, they're raising concerns that are valid, environmental concerns, and that's their job. So I just want to reiterate that is a major difference, but I encourage you, it's more than just the name, and compare both ordinances. The other thing I wanted to mention is I do appreciate everyone that has spoken tonight and our ability and opportunity to do so. I appreciate all of the representation from other towns around us, because it really is a coordination between towns that we would need to work together. The environment is not disconnected, it's connected. And to say that it's okay or it's not okay to have a commission or not, that's a moot point. We need to have people to raise these concerns, and we need to work with other towns and welcome them even at our meetings. I hope they would welcome us to their meetings if we had a concern that crossed our borders. So I think we owe them respect, and we also, and they as they would respect us when we went to their meetings.
The respect wasn't given, that's why it was given back. It wasn't anything to do with where they were from.
I just want to acknowledge the coordination of other towns along with us.
But we're not here to be belittled either by speakers. We're volunteers also.
Well, with the change in the status of it from a commission to a committee, we incentivize you to participate, or would it lessen your enthusiasm for the project?
Good question. I'm not on the commission. I'm on the Water Watch Committee. But, and I can't speak for the Environmental Commission members, but in my professional career, if my job description, or job title change, I would be affected, I would feel less important. And also, just, we have teachers in the room, we have parents in the room. For me, and I'm a parent of 2 kids that are, they're my little, they love the environment. I want them to be involved, and I want them to feel that they can get involved at a level that is respected at all levels of government, local, state, and federal. My daughter just learned all the levels of government. She's gonna go to Trenton on her trip, 4th grade. I would like her to know that she can be respected and her opinion can count at a planning board level, at a level of government that is respected and gets attention. And I feel that if you take that word and make it a committee, that does lessen, I think, people's appreciation for the work that they do and their impacts.
Rerun, Tony Forlini. If you go on the ANJEC website, and this is not being rude, most of your links are broken on the site, going to the communities to find out if they're commissions or if they're advisory boards. If you look at Monmouth County, 33% of the towns are advisory boards. There's 12 and 50 advisory, 12 advisory boards.
Directly towards us, please.
12 advisory boards and 30 commissions. The one thing that was common among all of them was the mission statement. They all had the same mission statement. I went to each of the communities. Monmouth Beach is an advisory board. Wall Township is an advisory board. If you go to their website and look it up, the mission statement looks like it was written by a state agency and they just incorporated into their document. One of them was called the Committee for Environmental Commissions. This is great, I love that one. I think Morristown, New Jersey and South Jersey had this long name for an advisory board and so forth. It's just a name change. We're not destroying Oceanport. All we're doing is bringing it up to stuff with the existing regulations and stopping the duplication which is occurring. I went through a CAFR application. It cost me $35,000 in legal and engineering fees and $15,000 in penalties because the town didn't do the right thing when they had the development. That's it. I'm good.
Address us, you can name again and address us.
Elizabeth Ritter from Randolph, New Jersey, but Deputy Director at ANJEC, which is the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, to be clear. We have nothing to do with any government, except that we work with local officials. I don't contend that in 4 hours we can train Environmental Commission fully, but that's why we are staffed 9 to 5, 5 days a week, have a website, have emails, have phone numbers, and come to meetings like this on occasion. The Wall Township Environmental Advisory Board, their ordinance is like your current ordinance, just the word. You want to change that ordinance to just say the word committee and refer to the state statute like the Wall Township one does? Fine with all of us. You're not changing anything in their powers other than the word, but that is not what you're doing tonight. You are taking away the power of them to review site plans, which you want. They are a free resource, local, that know your town better than any other state agency, better than any, maybe engineers and people that you hire professionally. They are not in it for the money. They are not, all they're looking is to protect the residents and the community. And you should be looking to that and acknowledging that resource that you have for free. I think that's it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Jeff, you're going to we are.
I'd love to go Let's go first, yes.
I'm a little shy. I'm from Eatontown, actually. Jeff King, 24 Elizabeth Parkway, which is just upstream. That's the Meadowbrook and the Husky Brook. That goes down into the Oceanport Creek. Kayak out there. I believe in environmental commissions. I believe in what they're doing. I believe that that's leadership and involvement and buy-in that a town would be lucky to have. I'm actually really proud of Eatontown's EC. I'm very inspired by what they do, the involvement they have. And sure, a committee could do that too, but that's where the Class 4 officer comes in, right? Counselors, it's in the statute that creates the NJ Environmental Commission, so we don't want to sacrifice that by changing the language legally, do we? I mean, that's the decision we're talking about. Access to the site plans, that's the conduit. So it's not semantic, it's substantial. Thank you for allowing me to voice my opinion on this matter. Thank you. God bless the medical cannabis community.
Jeff Oak, 60 Cumberland Avenue. Thank you, my friend Jeff, for the segue. And we can all have a good laugh at it like we just did because he has cannabis leaves on his hat. I was just
I understand.
visually, I wasn't addressing that. So anyway, we heard about environmental stuff. We heard a lot about engineering. We didn't hear a lot about how we're going to fix it. We heard about removing it, where we're going to take it, and we didn't get to that part. But obviously, we have dirt, and it's filthy. You know, what are we going to do with it? There was a lot of filthy dirt over in Japan when we had the radiation that went into the environment was catastrophic. The answer environmentally there, which you're going to start hearing about in the future from the environmental folks, of course, I'm not a professional, I'm told, and we were not entitled to as much opinion. But the answer there was that they used hemp. They used the hemp plant to soak up the radiation. That's how that's what hemp does for the environment. It has thousands of useful applications. We were in Point Pleasant last night.
About the ordinance.
This is important, Jay. I'm just trying to. Everybody took the time here tonight. The environment, what we've seen here is very important to the people in town. And I believe there's another agenda outside of town that's taking hold here tonight. I think that's what's going on. There's a bigger picture here of environmental deregulation. I can see it. I know what's going on. I'm not blind. I read. That's all I can do. So, but I bring answers. That's what I do. I help people with cancer. I help people with MS. And that's what we are attached to the environment, like the young lady said. We are directly attached to it. And that's why this plant can help us. It can help us in the situation with this dirty soil that we have. Sorry, I'm waving my lollipop back there. We're going to have to deal with this contaminated soil. So that's the answer to it. We're also going to be sick, like I am. Our waterways are filthy. We heard about it. We have dirty soil. We have dirty waterways. We're going to get cancer. We have it. I had it. People in the room have it. What is the answer to it? To stay attached biologically to what can help us. That's medical cannabis. And to use industrial hemp to help clean our environment. Again, the town's dropping the ball on that one. So if you really want to also protect the environment, protect the people from being exposed to it, do a little more work tonight and get to work. And the state's going to tell you to do it anyway. Get rid of that silly advantage put on medical cannabis and start actually saving people.
Anybody else? Nobody else? We have a motion to close the public hearing. Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, now we move to the business end of it.
Mr. Mayor, I make the motion to adopt this ordinance and advertise in accordance with law.
Second.
Okay, any comment? I'll start off. All right, we've got volunteers who subject themselves to the rigors that are associated with being on the environmental commission. And when this was first approached, it sounded like we had a duplication of efforts. After speaking with the environmental commission members at length and hearing what they said tonight, I think I have a different perspective on what they do for the borough and why they do what they do for the borough. There are both practical and philosophical changes to this ordinance. One of the main tenets of this change is that it would remove the environmental commission's ability or committee's ability, if it's passed, to pass on plan amendments and anything going for the planning board. And I think that's an integral part of why these people serve on this board. They feel like they have to make a difference. We're essentially a town made up of volunteers, including us. And if we de-incentivize the reason for being on these volunteer positions or volunteer boards, I think we're going to be in trouble. You know, people will stop volunteering. We have enough trouble trying to get people to volunteer that we make it difficult. I'm not. This issue about the liability, I don't know that. I'm looking at the statute right now, and I don't see anywhere that it says they get to make decisions. And as a practical matter, if we change this to a committee, there is no statutory authority to put a committee member on the planning board. That disappears. We have another ordinance that would have to be amended because we've got ordinance 250-2 that says the term of a Class 2 or Class 4 member who is also a member of the Environmental Commission shall be for 3 years or terminate at the completion of his term in his office as a member of the Environmental Commission, which comes first. So I'm guessing at a later date we're going to amend that, or we're going to change, I don't know, we're going to change that to an Environmental Committee and essentially have the same power. I don't know. I'm sorry? Well, our ordinance right now essentially requires someone from the Environmental Commission to be on the planning board.
Our ordinance says that the municipal land use law provides the Class 2 position to either be an environmental commission member if the town has one,
Right.
or another option, which I forget the exact wording, but you still have a position, it would just be someone, a member from the public. Just
Not necessarily someone from,
I'm not saying
I
for or
understand,
with,
but the environmental commission member is deleted from that authorization. That's a fact. So I don't have a.
Could be a member of the environmental committee.
Could be.
I don't believe the land use law provides it. I'm
It
not
gives,
determined that.
it gives a particular group from which you can select. Commission is the primary group, and then.
No, but what, I think what,
If it's a member
but
of the public.
you can't pick a member from the environmental committee then? Is that what you were saying?
Strictly prohibited? It lists the type of member that it is, lists the pool of people who can select that person from. An environmental committee is not one of that pool, nor is the general public.
Not for Class 2.
Not for that class. There's different.
There's other.
Yeah, there's.
Doesn't preclude you from putting a member of the environmental commission as a different committee, as a different class. You just don't put it as a class 2.
Correct. Class 2 is a specific.
Correct. But you can put somebody on and they'd be a regular member.
Class 4 is other citizens of the municipality. Class 2 is the mayor, Class 1 is the mayor or the mayor's designee in the absence of the mayor, in the form of a council manager form. Class 2 is one of the officials of the municipality other than a member of the governing body, to be appointed by the mayor, provided that if there be an environmental commission, the member of the environmental commission is also a member of the planning board as required by section blah, 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 shall be deemed to be the Class 2 planning board member for purpose of this act in the event that there be among the Class 4 or alternate members of the planning board, both a member of the zoning board of adjustment and a member of the board of education.
Okay, so.
Right.
But that doesn't preclude you from putting somebody on the planning board as not a class 2 or class. Just can't be that specific spot. Correct?
I'm reading the rest of it. It can be a class 4.
Right. But it could be a regular member.
Just as John Hughes.
Correct, exactly, right, right.
Happens to be a member of the environment as well.
Yeah, under class 4, it could be other citizens of the municipality, under class 2,
Right, class 2 again, class 4.
that's another practical. Having listened to the people on the board, or the volunteers on the board, I just think this is a poor way of going about treating our volunteers. So the motion is second. Anyone else want to talk? Not? Goes to a vote. On the vote.
Councilman Proto?
Yes.
Councilman Irais?
Yes.
Councilman Gallo?
Yes.
Councilman O'Brien? Council President Stoll?
Yes.
Shame on you guys.
Shame on you all.
Shame on you guys. That's a good for Ocean Board. Okay, the next item we have. Thanks, folks. Keep it down, please. We're going on to the next item, which is committee reports. Councilman Proto.
Hold them out. Election day, remember election day.
Okay, folks, 10, this round of committee reports, sit down. What is this?
Please have conversations outside in the hallway. We are continuing the meeting. Thank you.
First item we have on committee reports is Councilman Proto, Planning and Development.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First thing I have to report on is the executive session, so not much I can say, but we will be discussing the recently passed ordinance for financial agreement or a pilot for Ocean World Gardens. That pilot apparently needs to be redone and possibly renegotiated. The agreement was structured under the property tax exemption statute. The fault for this lies somewhere between the developer and the attorneys. This may work out for the benefit of Oceanport. Moving development, one person made us aware of other provisions in the pilot statutes that may possibly lead to more money for the borough. So he's been instructed to pursue these negotiations in order to make as best deal possible for the borough. But I believe worst case scenario, we still wind up with the previous deal, which was passed and was considered ready to win for Oceanport. Next, NJCU received site plan approval for their classroom building at Squire Hall. The next day, they reached out to discuss a financial agreement or a pilot with the borough. Since Plan Amendment 13 has not been pulled or amended by FEMIRA as NJCU requested, we will not be engaging in those discussions for now. If that plan is amended, which may take place at the April FEMIRA meeting, then we may engage in talks. These negotiations will only be successful if we can reach a deal that protects Oceanport from FEMIRA and NJCU coming at a later date and building anything in phase 2 or 3 without Oceanport having the final say as to what gets built. Now, contrary to what some may say, this council, again, is not anti-development at the fore. We are anti-overdevelopment, and that is all that's being proposed right now. We are not anti-pilot. We believe pilots should be only used when there is a direct benefit for Oceanport. They are not candy to be given out to every trick-or-treater that rings our doorbell. They can be an effective tool when used properly, but if handed out recklessly, they can have a long-term detrimental effect on the town or city. There is always a price to pay, and when they expire, that price is always borne by the taxpayers. However, I can say unequivocally there will be no pilots for residential developments while this council is here. Lastly, I do not believe personally that the Fort Monmouth section of Oceanport should be looked at as a city or neighborhood unto itself. It is and will be a fabric of our community, and it is the leaders and taxpayers of Oceanport who should control our destiny, not a group of unelected bureaucrats. I personally do not care how many bus tours Bruce Stedman arranges, but I will not stop fighting to protect our home rule and our local zoning and planning laws. Thank you.
Councilman Irais, Finance and Administration.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to clear up several misconceptions regarding Amendment 13 to the Fort Redevelopment Plan. First, there has been no official change to Amendment 13, the college proposal. Yes, we have a letter of intent from NJCU, but nothing from Premier other than a quote in the 200 Times from Bruce Stedman that says, based on discussions with that Oceanport, which was Councilman Proto, Councilman Solo, and I, and NJCU had regarding future elements, NJCU has agreed to make some changes and reduce the scope of the project to some extent. This doesn't mean the amendment has been withdrawn or eradicated, but it will be probably be amended. To be clear, we are not against redevelopment of the fort. What we are against are huge, high-density urban development plans that circumvent our current zoning and planning laws and do not fit into the character of our small town. Simply saying that it's okay because it's over there is not a prudent strategy. It's akin to me saying do whatever you want on Pocono because most of us in the rest of Oceanport won't even see it. We are against the redevelopment plan that puts the burden on our current taxpayers, residents, and emergency volunteer services. If anyone in this room is okay with subsidizing redevelopment at the fort by paying higher taxes, please let me know. Allowing tax breaks for millionaire developers and new residents is exactly what this council is being asked, and in some cases even pressured, to approve. Your council is being asked to consider pilots or payment in lieu of taxes for big developers. We are not in favor of higher taxes for our current residents to allow developers to make more money. What we also are against is amendment plans that are being kept secret or hidden from Oceanport, or plans that are misleading at best. For Plan Amendment 13, your elected officials were told one thing, only to find out that the plan is so significantly changed that it included high-rise dorms and multi-story indoor parking garages. Then we were told that Oceanport was in favor of this plan, and we knew about it 5 months earlier. This is disingenuous and in some cases an outright lie. Also, what we are against is amendments without a plan. For example, a newly proposed development that doesn't fit in with a previous proposed development wouldn't make sense. Why would a full-fledged university sit next to proposed luxury townhomes? Why would a technology campus fit in with some of the more recently developed and proposed developments? Fort Monmouth redevelopment should view the fort as one redevelopment parcel and not simply sell parcels of land to the highest bidder. This only puts money in Premier's coffers and does nothing to benefit the residents of Oceanport. Make no mistake about it, this council, with the support and help of our professionals, volunteers, and residents, will keep pushing back. The plan was to keep us all in the dark so things would sail through unnoticed. It is up to all of us to remain vigilant. We keep hearing that there is a process. I keep asking, can Oceanport trust this process? That's all I have today, Mayor.
Council, by the way, it says Council President Irais here. I almost said it.
You did almost say it, I had Freudian slip.
Councilman Gallo, Public Works.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to report, next month is April, and April's leaf cleanup time, so I want everybody to break their leaves and get them out. Public Works will be picking up leaves all through the month of April. And also, Public Works now has been focusing on the fields. They're getting them ready for use. And they're working on our lawn equipment, getting that ready for spring, and they're working on cleaning up all the parks. They also, we have a hot box instead of just for filling potholes, instead of a cold patch, we have a hot box now. And that way the blacktop comes out superheated, and it goes and fills out the potholes. And they got trained on it from a company called Falcon. So they're working on that. So if anybody has a pothole, you can call into the borough and they'll get it filled. And that's all I have.
And just while you're on the subject of Public Works, Ricky and Donna, please thank the guys. There was somebody who said they sent a complaint in on a Sunday, and the first thing Monday morning, the pothole was filled. So they said they've never heard of such a thing before, so they were very happy. And I guess, Donna, I sent you a note, and Donna said that was the first time they tried out the new hot box machine, and it's worked well. So Thank you guys for that.
You were out there, Donna?
I was.
Anything else?
That's it, thank you.
Councilman O'Brien, Health and Human Services.
Recently, the Water Wash Committee met March 11th at the Borough Hall. The committee was able to test water at 7 of the intended sites, there were 10 they tested at. The tests were completed during an outgoing tide. The levels for entero, turbidity, and dissolved oxygen were all well within acceptable tolerance levels. The next planned water testing date is March 28th. I also like to report on the recent fish kill with the help of Richard Gruskos. It resulted in a large number of menhaden or moss bunkers that were visible on the banks of on the shallows of our waterways. The explanation I was given was that the fish kills happen when the dissolved oxygen levels in the water are dangerously low for that species, usually lower than 4. Menhaden also swim in densely packed schools that can drive the dissolved oxygen level down when they're in confined areas. Over the weekend, the DO readings of 2.6 to 2.8 resulted in a fish kill, and it recovered significantly today to around 10 when they were tested in Newport Creek. This is not common for this time of year. It's generally more common in the summer months when the temperatures are high, the wind is cooler, or there may be more fertilizers, pesticides in the water. So this was an uncommon event, certainly unsightly, and that was the explanation I was given, so I can't push us back.
Council President Sol, public safety.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 things, I'll try to keep it short. Number 1, just wanted to elaborate a little bit more on the Chief's appointment to the FBI Academy. Again, congratulations, Chief, on that. There are no costs to the Borough of Oceanport for this. Every cost, the tuition, room and board, food, specified clothing, everything are supplied to the Academy. And again, I just wish him good luck down there. He has also received a green light from his family, so that all bases are covered as far as I'm concerned and as far as we know. So again, congratulations and good luck, Chief. Above and beyond that, moving to the fire department and to first aid, members that are here tonight, you guys can stand up for me. We received some information provided to us by them from the borough of Seabright. Back on February 8th of 2019, there was a 3-alarm fire that erupted at the Waterway condominiums in the borough of Seabright. Both our first aid squad and also the fire department, of course, responded to that, and they received some proclamations from the borough of Seabright, and I'd just like to read through them. I might add 2 words real quick.
Who told you guys to sit down?
No, you guys get to stand up for this one. You guys get to stand up. No, that's fine. Whereas on February 8, 2019, a 3-alarm fire erupted at Waterway condominiums in the borough of Seabright, and whereas at a moment's notice, emergency personnel from all over Monmouth County were quick to respond to an uncertain situation, mitigate the danger, and fully combat the threat of destructive fire in order to protect individuals, families, pets, and all other aspects of our community. And whereas the demand of first responders and firefighters are accompanied both by personal and physical tolls that they knowingly accept while risking their lives to protect the lives of others. And therefore be it resolved that Peter Long, the mayor of the borough of Seabright, County, Monmouth, State of New Jersey, we hereby commend the Oceanport First Aid, the Oceanport Hook and Ladder Fire Company, and the Portapac Chemical Hose Company for their actions that day. On behalf of the entire council, they express their gratitude and their appreciation of all those who serve heroically in this line of work. They thank, of course, all departments for their dedication and representing our departments in Oceanport, each of the 3 departments that were out there with professionalism and unmatched services. So a big round of applause for all the members. Any speeches?
Nothing else?
That's it.
Councilman Deeran's not here, Parks and Recreation Liaison, I don't know if anybody has a report from him or no. All right, we'll move on to my report. Again, I got the same proclamation, it's amazing what you guys do.